Circling.
There we go.
Now an error occurred. Oh, we're live. Okay.
There we are.
Good morning, everyone. It is Lisa Wickman with on the Biz Chat with Lisa, and today my guest is Rick Wenner, again
Good
from
morning,
Credit.
Lisa.
Good morning, Rick. Thank you for being here. This episode is brought to you by Perfect Virtual Assistants, where we help you buy back your time by helping you find Filipino talent for about $8 to $10 an hour for an executive assistant, social media manager, or whatever it is that you're looking for. So again, welcome, Rick. I'm excited to have you on the show again. Rick is a regular guest. Rick and his partner, Jared, are our guests every first Tuesday of the month. So we are always talking about money, finances, debt, getting pre-approved for a mortgage or a business loan or whatever it is. So Rick, again, welcome and
Yes,
let's take it
absolutely.
away.
Yeah,
So my first question to you, or we're talking about debt, and not all debt is the same. So let's talk about that. Can you tell us what do you mean when you tell me not all debt is the same?
absolutely. And it comes from a conversation I have pretty frequently with clients that I work with. I'm looking at their credit report. We're talking about a budget. We're talking about credit. We're talking about getting them on the path to becoming a homeowner. And their view of debt is that all debt's the same, right? And so the
Yeah.
first thing I do, my job, my goal is to get them to start to realize that not all debt is the same. For example, I might look at a balance on a credit card on their credit report, and let's say it's a $500 balance on a $1,000 Capital One card, right? That's very different than a $500 charged off debt, right?
Right.
So charge off is very different than an open and active balance
Well,
on a credit card.
before you continue, you have to tell people what a charge off is because not everybody knows what a charge off is.
You are correct. So a charge off is when a bill, let's say a credit card in this case, goes unpaid for 90 days or more. The bank, the creditor in this case, this example, Capital One, charges it off. And what that means is in their accounting, it goes from being a bill that they're going to get paid and received to they're charging it off. They're basically going to the tax code and saying, hey, we've lost this money or we no longer expect to be paid this money. We're going to charge it off and we're not going to get taxed on it. So they charge it off their books and it
And
shows
then,
up on your credit report as bad debt. It's bad debt. It's not good
oh,
debt.
there goes my debt.
He's
I
talking
was
about,
afraid of
I
this.
said bad debt. Yeah,
I,
bad debt. He doesn't like the bad debt.
I hope that doesn't continue. So
Yeah, that's good.
first time, anyway. So and that is not a
So,
good thing.
so a charge off is very different than a positive debt because when I'm typically working with somebody, we're talking about what impact does it have on their credit score, right?
Right.
So a charge off has very negative impact on your credit because you typically have that 30-day late, and then it was 60 days late, and then it was
Yeah.
90 days late, and then it charged off. So now you have four derogatory marks on your credit.
So that's
That
4.
four, yeah, because you have the 30 days that it was late, then followed by the 60 days that it was late, and then it was 90 days late. And this is getting reported every 30 days on your credit report. And then you get the charge off code. And I've even seen it where a charge off code gets repeated every month for 2, 3, 4, 5. Seen it for 24 months. The same charge off code hits your credit report.
So
That's
each one
very
of those,
different types of debt. Yeah.
yeah, each one of those is it.
Each one of those is a ding on your credit score.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so these are. I'm glad you're slowing me down because I've been doing this for quite a while. So yeah, charge off is different than a late payment, and it's the most damaging type of debt to your credit, to your buying power, and to your goal of getting yourself in a position for loan approval for a home. Absolutely. And a lot of these things come up this time of year because if you're blessed enough to be, getting a tax return or getting, some type of money saved up to put towards credit or invest in getting yourself in a position to be pre-approved for a mortgage, it's important to know how you're going to budget different types of debt. What debt are you going to pay off first? What debt are you going to pay off second? What debt can be paid off today versus tomorrow or, the following month, or what debt can be put on a payment plan? So that's why it's very important to understand the differences in what type of debt you have, because it's going to actually save you money over time versus putting it all in the same bucket. My dad taught me, hey, when you get your tax return, just, everything that you've racked up as far as debt, just take your tax return and pay it all off because it's all going to have the same impact on, you know, your ability to finance a car, finance a house. And that's not the case. You
Well,
have
let's
to sort your debt out.
Okay, let's talk. So debt, I'm imagining, we haven't talked about this yet, but would go into buckets. Would that be correct?
What's that?
That debt would go into different buckets.
Yes, that goes exactly. So
And
as I'm sorting this out, we're putting it into different buckets. What are we going to apply? What strategy are we going to apply to that particular type of debt? Right?
Because I think you're right. I think a lot of people, let's say they get $1,000, $2,000, they have some debt, that they would just really put all that down. So give us an example, or put that all towards debt. And maybe they do it willy-nilly. Maybe they don't have a strategy, but because they don't have education behind them on what truly debt is. So give us an example of somebody who gets a couple $1,000s and they have a variety of debt. What would you suggest that would be a smart move for them?
Well, the first thing to do is, when you look at the debt that we talked about earlier, the charged off type of debt, the debt that's impacting your credit, is to realize that by making a payment on that debt, you're renewing the date that the most recent payment was made late. In other words, you can't go back in time and make now make an on-time payment. Now, your intuition, the person in you is saying, oh, I need to finally do right. I'm back working. I have this money. I'm going to make a payment. And I'm not suggesting you don't pay the debt. It's just not the next step. The first step when it comes to charge off debt is try to get the accounting of that information removed from your credit report, so that they're not holding your future credibility captive. Get that debt removed, get those 30, 60, 90 day lates removed from your credit report along with the balance, and then call them up on the phone and negotiate a reasonable settlement. Right? And I'll use the quotation marks reasonable, because now you have the leverage to decide and determine what's best for you, right? You're not just throwing money at it hoping they delete it from your credit report, which they typically will not do. It's removed from your credit report. Doesn't mean it's gone away. I oftentimes say, tongue in cheek, it's not a debt report, it's a credit report. It's a historical accounting of the information, right?
Yeah.
If I end up getting that $500 charged off, if my team and I, or you do it yourself, get that account removed from your credit report, doesn't mean you don't owe that $500. It just means that 30, 60, 90 day late and that charge off are no longer on your credit report. So that's the first step in addressing that type of debt, right? Then you call them up on the phone, and that's the most, right? That's where you get to save the most money too, because they've already charged it off. They've no longer have an expectation that they're going to get paid the full balance, right? They've penalized you with late fees and, maybe in some cases continued interest during those 30, 60, 90, 120 days.
Sure.
Right. And I know this gets complicated, but this is why the consultation that we have with people is so important, because the first thing I start doing, as you suggested, is start dividing this into different buckets. So that's what we do with the charge-off debt, right? Now, what that's in reverse of is that doesn't necessarily mean that paying that debt is the number one priority. It might mean you're waiting until that data gets removed.
Got it.
So the most important type of debt to start addressing, if you have a windfall, is open and active credit cards, right? And as we've talked about a couple of times on the show, that's because the 30% of how your score is calculated. If you imagine a pie chart, right?
Yep.
All right. And you talk about third of that pie out of that pie chart, that's how much impact, to be dramatic, that's how much impact the balances have on open and active credit, versus paying off that charged off, that bad debt. That has no impact on your credit. In fact, it might lower your credit score, because you're adding new data to an already charged off account. So that's one of the more difficult conversations that I have with people. And I'm not suggesting that one is more important or less than important. It's just one gets you closer to your goal sooner. So you can start refinancing bad debt. So you can start to see your score go up. So you can start having more options available to either reposition that debt or refinance it.
Okay. So you get this windfall. You're not charge off unless you get it removed.
Yep.
Account or whatever removed. What else should you be doing with it? You said open a credit card.
Yeah, opening and managing credit is super important. And I draw the analogy. It's like, it's like going to a gym. It's like a muscle in your body, Lisa. If you're not exercising that muscle, you can't expect it to continue to be strong. So one of the things you could do is you could secure a credit card with cash and start opening up a secured credit card.
Okay,
So
because
that
I
you
was
have
going to
open
say, I don't want people to get the impression that we're saying, hey, you get a windfall, go get a credit card.
No.
That's
This is, I
kind of
tell people that too. This is not a reason to go to the Mall
yeah,
of America with the kids or the,
right.
or you know, the partner to have fun.
So this is
It's,
about strategy.
this is a strategy. And I get this question a lot. Hey, I have bad credit. Who in the
Yeah,
world is going to open up a credit card with me? You know,
yeah,
I may have had a bad experience with, you know, Citibank or another creditor. You know, maybe you've already been denied 2 or 3 times for a credit card that you try to open up, you know, over the last couple of months. So there are creditors out there that, then this is a very important type of debt. This idea of a secured credit card, and for example, a couple that come to mind are like Discover or Capital One. You'll take, let's say, $200 of that money, right? That
hmm
savings. You'll take that and you'll secure it against the use of a credit card. And let's just say it is, in fact, the Discover card. You're going to invest that $200 into securing that card. And here's the best part about Discover: they're going to give you that $200 back after you've demonstrated that you can responsibly use that card for 6 months. They're going to give you that deposit back without having to close that account and lose all that positive payment history. So what you're doing during that time where that $200 is secured is you're putting something like Netflix on that credit card, right?
hmm
Something small, probably something you're already paying cash for. You're not bringing on any more debt, right? You're just simply inserting that newly secured credit card into a cycle of borrowing $1, paying $1 back, borrowing $1, paying $1 back, that you may have already, in the case of Netflix, you probably already have it on your debit card, right?
yeah,
So that's a strategy. That's not taking on new debt. That's investing that $200 in a secured card that, you know, if you manage it the way you could, and otherwise it's best for your score, you're going to get that security deposit back. And we call that a credit machine. You set that up, freeze that credit card in a block of ice, and, you know, make
yeah.
sure you have a plan for it if it needs to be used for anything else. But that's its only intent. That's its only purpose, is to take the steps necessary to manage credit without
hmm
having debt. It's an investment. Yeah,
Okay.
so there's a lot of strategies that deal with just credit cards. And I'm glad you brought the point up about, because a lot of times people will say, and, you know, you hear Dave Ramsey and you hear a lot of people doing podcasts and whatnot. And these are all great advice, great strategies. But I think a lot of people are afraid to open up credit because they've experienced bad things. They've had bad debt. I've done it. I raised twins, you know, and right here in Minneapolis, in the shadow of the Mall of America. And I remember them being 3, 4, 5 years old. I'd walk in there and people would walk up to me and go, you know, they're, you know, virtually identical. And they'd be, oh, you know, are they twins? And I'd be like, no, I just happen to be walking around with 2 5-year-olds that look like each other. But the point is you'd walk around being dad with this credit card in your pocket, right? And you wanted to be the hero. You wanted to be that guy, right? And so
Yeah,
I know what it's like to have debt. I know how scary it is. I mean, to this day, having the type of credit I do, I still have to have discipline and strategy in place, especially online. I mean, you want to talk about bad debt, you know, sitting online. You know, I'm a music guy. You
fine.
sit online, Amazon.com, you sit there for 20 minutes and you know, you have $2,100 on your cart and you're like, okay, I'm emptying the cart. I mean, we've all been there, right? We've all had that moment where we're like, oh, it's so easy to do, especially online. You know, Amazon will be here tomorrow. So all these strategies are with intent. They're understanding that if I were to do this organically, you could probably figure all these things out yourself. You know,
Yes.
it's about making sure you're being proactive with it, educated, disciplined. This is financial literacy, what we're talking about right now.
So you mentioned Dave Ramsey, and I don't follow Dave Ramsey. One of my daughters does, but or not my only daughter, I mean, but what is his schooling, and what do you mean that you have a different thought?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I think a lot of what Dave has experienced in his younger life was he had bad credit, right? He'll say it, admittedly. I filed for bankruptcy, and he's really trying to make sure no one ever puts themselves in that position. And he's
hmm
absolutely right for doing so. Credit can be, it's a double-edged sword. I tell people very frequently, hey, I'm going to teach you how to build a shovel. Now you can either build a hole or you can build a mound, right? So
Oh, that's
that's the truth, right? And I think what David's experiencing is a lot of success with that, where he doesn't often understand. I think he understands. He's just that, you know, righteous, if you will, about making sure you never borrow $1.
Oh, is
right?
that his premise? Don't borrow
That
money?
don't borrow money, right? Like
Oh,
let's say in your first time homebuyer program, the idea of borrowing money for your down payment would be something he would try everything possible under the sun to advise you to do other than borrow the money for that down payment assistance, right? Whereas I might say, okay, let's put your credit in a position where you can qualify for 100% financing. And so it's just a fine line between what is it what is it that's the best, method, the best steps to get there.
mhm.
There's two different philosophies on getting to the same
Yeah.
kind of goal, which is being debt free. Nobody wants to have debt. That's why this conversation today is so important. Is people say, I want to, what's your goal? Oh, I want to get out of debt. Well, if you're going to go out and buy a $200,000 house, is that debt? No, it's an
That's
investment.
an investment.
Yeah, it's not even debt. It's the fact that a rent payment's debt, right?
Yeah.
Mortgage payment's an investment, right? And that's where your expertise comes in, and that's where you're educating people on the difference between, and that's a great question about credit life versus kind of the Dave Ramsey thing. And I think if you combine both, you have the best of both worlds,
Yeah.
right? You
Well,
have
yeah, and he's educating a very large population of people just in money in general. You are dealing with people who have issues already.
100%. Yeah, no, that's a
You
good
know,
point. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's
So
a little late to be telling people, do this, do that, don't borrow a dollar when they already have $10,000 in charged off debt, right?
right,
Yeah.
right. So good debt versus bad debt. Good
Yep.
debt. So let's put buckets. Good debt is a mortgage.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is good debt anything that you're paying on time?
That's a great question. For the most part, it is, unless it's something like excessive credit card debt, like above 5, 6, 7, 10% of that a limit that is carried for more than a month. I sometimes think, especially men my age get into a little trouble, women too, with a car loan. Car loans can sometimes
Oh,
be bad debt. I mean, let's face it, if you're paying $700, $800, $900 a month for a car loan,
that
and
is
it sits in
crazy.
your parking lot, it sits in the parking lot at work or in the driveway at home, it's really not doing much for you. I mean, it's depreciating in value. I bought a Chevy Colorado, um, 4 or 5 years ago. It was a bad decision.
It
I
was a
mean, it
bad
didn't.
decision. Brand new. Well, I one of the things that I run into often when we are trying to get people pre-approved for a mortgage is that their car payment is killing them.
Yes.
500, 600, 700.
Yep.
And that goes against your qualifications for getting a mortgage or a business loan or whatever it is. And that kills people.
Well, it's the way they're separating things into buckets. I mean, if you think about what we're talking about here today, this is all based upon the perceived risk that a lender has. Let's say a mortgage lender, right? The perceived risk they're taking in borrowing you that next dollar, right?
Yeah.
It's if you have that $500, let's say Chevy Colorado payment, that's $500 that's at risk. If they finance your home, right, and let's say it's $200,000, there's 500, right, dollars that if things don't go well, if you lose your job or something happens, right, the unforeseen happens, you're still going to make more than likely going to continue to make that $500 car payment, right? You still need
Right.
to get to your next job or get to work. So that creditor, that mortgage lender feels threatened by that. They know that if push comes to shove, that debt's going to need to be sorted into buckets. And you're going to generally make the decision that means they're not going to get paid first. And every mortgage lender wants to get paid first. I mean, you've dealt with this even when you have a first and second mortgage on a home, right?
Yeah.
That first lender calls all the shots, right?
Yes.
No different than when it comes to the car situation. So when you have that, I'm not saying it's bad to have a car loan or car debt. It's just it understands that the higher amount you pay per month on your car payment, the less housing they're going to tell you can afford or finance.
Yeah.
It's just an adverse relationship that's there. I deal with that a lot. I see somebody's credit report and I ask them, hey, what are you paying for? And this is really where the rubber meets the road, not so much the payment amount, it's the interest that they pay on it. I mean, we all know people who are paying double digit interest rates on financing a vehicle.
I've had clients like that, and it's like,
Yeah.
wow, you got to refinance that, get out of that loan.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that is a possibility. You can refinance a car loan.
Oh yeah,
Just so
absolutely.
anybody who doesn't know, you can refinance a car loan and get down into the lower digits. I don't know what the currently interest rates are at that, but anyway, yeah, if you're in double digits, for sure.
Yeah, so that's one of those, let's just call it, we live in Minneapolis or we live in Minnesota, and you have 14 inches of snow on the ground in February, you're going to need a vehicle, right? We're not. So
Yes.
yeah, you refinance that. Other things that I think people, kind of look at and view as bad debt that's not really bad. Is it like, let's say, it's not even whether it's good because it reports on your credit report. You're getting credit for the monthly payment, right? Like, let's say I have T-Mobile for my cell phone use, right? And we talked about this off
Yep.
air. So if you have a cell phone payment that you make every month on T-Mobile, and let's say it's $60, right? If that's not reporting on your credit report each month, you're not getting credit for it in two areas. One, you're not getting credit for it on your credit report. I have yet to see anybody, and I've looked at a little over 50,000 credit reports in the last 10 years. I have yet to see anybody getting credit for their monthly $60 T-Mobile payment on their cell phone, right? It's
Right.
debt. You have a payment. They're going to take away your phone or shut your cell phone off if you don't pay it, but you're not getting as much credit for it. So it's not what I would call good debt
Right.
versus having, what I said earlier, having a Discover card that's paying off your Netflix each and every month. That's a good bill to have, that keeps the kids happy, that, you get some entertainment, and it's already something you're budgeting and it's already in your budget.
Yeah.
Right. So all these strategies are in the margins. These are small things that just are behavioral changes. But the idea is that it's good debt. It's good debt to have, because if you were just paying cash for it, nobody would know about it.
Yeah.
Right. So another example of that, whether it's reporting or not, is like trade lines. Right. And I know you do a lot more FHA, deal with a lot more FHA financing or first time home buyer financing that I do. But they talk about having to have traditional trade lines, right? And I think in some cases, what you need like 2 or 3 traditional trade lines,
I don't know.
season trade. Let's say it's 2, right? So for the sake of argument, it's 2. You need 2 traditional trade lines. Well, if you're paying let's say you're paying, somebody to mow your lawn every month, you're paying them cash. The bank doesn't know that. They're not going to take that as documentation that you pay somebody every month, right?
Right.
But if it's a debt that's reporting to your credit report, that could be a traditional trade line.
Yeah.
They can see that as responsibility. They can see that as credibility because it can be documented and underwritten. So these are the types of things that I talk about when I'm talking about different types of debt that you're getting credit for. 2, if you're paying it, are you getting something in return like better credit, right? Is it reporting on your credit report? And is it, can you bring on debt and it be looked at and viewed as an investment? For example, securing $200 towards a Discover card to get 6 months of credit for on-time payments, that could be 100 points, just that strategy alone in improving your credit.
Just that, even if you have a lot of debt.
If you have a lot of bad debt, no. If you have good debt, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have
If
those 30.
somebody's trying to increase their score, but they still have credit card debt, but they want to get a secured card to help them raise that, even if they have credit card debt, would that secured card help increase?
Yes, because you're getting more credit for
Okay.
payments made each month on lent money.
Okay.
And you're increasing your utilization. You're improving your utilization, not increasing it, improving it, lowering it.
All right.
Versus if it's already charged off. If I look at a credit report, or you look at Credit Karma, or one of your clients looks at Credit Karma, and they see those 30, 60, 90 and that charge off code, and Credit Karma appears on a big, box that says CO on it, charged off. If you're seeing that on your credit report, that means there isn't much you're going to be able to do. I mean, it does help to open up new credit, but not as much, because that negative data, those negative derogatory marks, act like an anchor. It's like a boat anchor. It's like trying to drive a boat with a 80-pound anchor tied to the bottom of the floor, ocean floor. It's not going to go up as fast.
So with a charge off, no. So I have one more question before or not a question, but talking about debt, and we've talked about this a little bit before, being off the grid because you don't want to owe debt, because
You
you're a
don't
New
want
Jersey follower or whatever. So you're off the grid. You can't necessarily get anything if
yeah,
you're off the grid and you have no credit, right?
yep,
You have to have credit. So you do have
100%.
credit lines in order to get a loan, whether it's a mortgage, a business loan, anything, you have to have a status. So I know one way of doing that, right, is to get a secured credit card
Yes.
to start building that. I
Mhm.
just wanted to explain
100%.
that a little bit.
Yeah, and that's a great point because a lot of people, we all know what we make, we all know what we're taxed, we all have a pretty good sense of, you know, what's coming in the door, right? What
Right.
our income looks like. If but if nobody knows that, right? If you don't have a tax return, you have to provide a tax return to show earnings, right? The same is true of debt and expenses. If nobody is seeing what you're spending, being off the grid doesn't even no good. It hurts you because the bank doesn't have a score to calculate. They don't have bank statements to produce to show you the responsible nature of your spending, if it is there. So yeah, it's important to have the credit card, and I know it seems counterintuitive to have to pay $200 of your own money to secure that, but it's worth it,
Oh, for
especially
sure.
if they're going to give you that security deposit back. It's really, you're literally creating data on your credit report that shows responsibility, right?
Right.
It's kind of like this. Hey, they say, here's your receipt. Here's your receipt. The receipt is you paid, you borrowed some money to pay off a bill, and then you paid that debt off right away. You know, awesome. These are the types of strategies and tactics that most people who have great credit are doing without even being aware that they're doing it, right?
Mhm.
Like me, I was fortunate to, like a lot of people, to just have good credit when I was younger. It was all accidental. It was all because I wanted to go to Best Buy and get a credit card to buy a stereo, right? It wasn't because I was trying to buy a house. I just learned a lot of those things. And then when I
Yeah.
learned about, and have seen people do these things, I don't think any strategy that I've ever professed or put as part of our coaching is ever something I figured out on my own. Most of it's from clients who figured these things out. And in this case, this secured credit card is actually something which is so unimaginable to most people. The people that decided the secured credit card were people that want to lend money to people with what? Bad credit, to help them build up and have better credit to do what? Borrow more money.
Borrow more money. There's always
So
a strategy.
so these strategies are often, in fact, most of the time, in response to the bank strategy for charging you higher interest rates and lending you more money. But absolutely, I'm glad we brought this up today, and I'll repeat it again. We talked about the fact that this is dangerous, and it's especially dangerous if what I'm doing or we're doing today is replacing a bad habit with a good strategy, because that bad habit isn't going to disappear without having these strategies in place. And I
Yeah.
tell people this oftentimes, and it's why, like Dave Ramsey and a lot of us have these classes and these services, is because you need to transform your behavior. You need to transform your financial literacy before you can expect any change when it comes to debt, right? And
Oh,
the biggest thing to understand is these buckets that we talked about today, and understanding why they need to be sorted out. And by the way, the other reason it's helpful to distinguish is it takes away a lot of the anxiety. I mean, I've had people literally like shaking, standing in my office talking about debt. And I get it. They're
oh goodness.
talking about fear. They're talking about uncertainty. They're talking about doubt. You deal with a lot of people sometimes. They're not sure. They're not even sure whether they're going to be able to go from paycheck to paycheck, right? Let alone buy a house, right? So these are the topics of conversation I have. This is a great one. Separating debt. Not all debt is created equal, and if you need help sorting it out, seek some help, get some help.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great conversation. I appreciate you being on. If anybody has questions about credit, you're interested. So Rick does credit repair. He'll meet with you, have a conversation if you are interested in learning what's going on with your own finances.
100%.
And that is a free consultation, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely. It's an educational opportunity for most people. They're going to get a earful of information, and definitely
yeah.
insight into what the path looks like to home ownership.
Yep. All right. Until next time,
Awesome. Thanks, Lisa.
everybody. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.